What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, and joined by my co-host once again. Finally, Alex Wilson is back. Welcome, my good friend. And we are here because we've got something to talk about for the New York Giants. Finally, OTAs have officially kicked off. They had their first practice yesterday, but they basically did nothing. Just went out there and did a couple of drills. But today, their first full, real, official practice of the OTA period. They did 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s. They actually went out there and practiced as a team. And there were a few key takeaways that we're pretty excited to go ahead, dive into, and discuss in today's joint episode, which I know you've all been eager to see back on the channel. Alex and I reunited. So we'll waste no more time. We'll go ahead and dive into the OTA takeaways. Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And I think the number one place that we should start this conversation is on the offensive line with Evan Neal, taking snaps as the second team left guard. Jon Runyan Jr. didn't practice today, but as a second team left guard, Evan Neal was out there. What's your main takeaway from that? And again, how are you doing? Have you missed the channel? It's been a while.
I'm doing great, man. And for those who thought that we broke up, that the Fireside Giants podcast imploded, no. Just waiting for some actual news so that we can discuss it in depth for you guys. And the Giants are back. Football is back. Storylines, narratives, position battles, everything. We are back and finally getting a dose of this new era, hopefully a golden age, maybe even. We have a long way to go to achieve that, but I will say this. The Giants are at least somewhat interesting for the first time in a couple of years. And there is a lot of talent on this roster. There's a lot of cool storylines to follow. There's a lot of what ifs, how good can we be? And right now I'm pretty excited to talk about just any news, any good news. And today we saw some action from Jackson Dart. We got some news before OTAs and then a kind of decent performance from Jaylin Hyatt. So there's a lot that kind of unfolded in the last 12 hours or so and, ongoing over the next couple of days, that I'm happy to be back on the channel. And now that we have stuff to talk about, you can expect much more of Anthony and I as we approach the summer months and really get into the heat of this team and what the roster is going to look like come for the regular season in September.
Yeah, for sure. Long road to September. It's been a long road just to OTAs, but of course, OTAs for the next couple of weeks, then that long break, then training camp at the end of the July, and then it all ramps up. Preseason, the regular season, it all just comes in a flurry. So let's start with Evan Neal, Alex. Let's talk about him. So, like I said, moved over to left guard. And to clarify for anybody who might be surprised by his placement on the offensive line, the reason he's not moving to right guard is because he doesn't have any experience at right guard. Evan Neal began his collegiate career as a freshman at Alabama playing left guard. He was the starter for 13 games that season, played well over 700 snaps at left guard during his first season with the Crimson Tide in college. So that's why he's playing left guard. That's where he's naturally aligned to play. He's succeeded there in the past, had a really good season his first year in college playing the left guard position. And the Giants are not looking at Evan Neal as a guy who they expect to be in the starting lineup this season. So they're not going to force him into right guard that he's never played to have him compete for that job when they kind of don't want him to be on the field starting in that job. They would rather him play a position where he's more comfortable, develop over at left guard, and hopefully by some point this season, perhaps he's ready to make his way into the lineup if need be. But I still don't think that's something that the Giants are hoping happens. This is the final season of Evan Neal's career. This is a do or die moment for him. We knew that the transition to guard was coming, and I'm excited that it's finally begun officially now with the start of OTAs. He started to make that transition to guard. So left guard it is, not right guard. Like I said, Jon Runyan still recovering from the injury that ended his season prematurely in 2024. So he didn't practice today. And then, as I said, we got Evan Neal over at left guard. I am curious to see if they ever have him over at right guard at some point during OTAs. But for now, left guard, the position that he started playing college football at, that's what he's going to be for the New York Giants. Alex, any key takeaways from Evan Neal moving over to the guard spot and, of course, being on the left side rather than the right side of the offensive line?
Well, I know Jon Runyan was out, so we'll see kind of if that made an impact in how the Giants were going about things. But I definitely thought he was going to play right guard, and I thought that was kind of made the most sense simply because Greg Van Roten is maybe an average presence, going into his 36-year-old season. Like, he is old now. Like, can we really depend on him to be an everyday starter at a high level? Not even a high level, like a mediocre level. That's a big question. Like, I'm not going to put my whole stock in Greg Van Roten being good in 2025 because he's been volatile all throughout his career. But I hope that he is, competent. Evan Neal's the high upside gamble risk Mekhi Becton style. Let's see what happens. Him playing left guard is interesting. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe they feel that his technique is better. Maybe they feel he has a stronger side. Maybe they feel that they want to stick him, in his growth next to a guy that can survive on an island. Like, they know Andrew Thomas can survive out there by himself. Maybe they feel like Evan Neal, that would take some pressure off of him. Who knows? All I know is one thing. I don't have any faith in Evan Neal right now. Zero. And the reason I say that is because he has not proven that he deserves any faith. If he has a good camp and he puts together good practices, I can instill some faith. But I'm at the point of being a Giants fan, Anthony, man, where if I don't see it, I do not believe it. That's where I am as a fan of these days. I have a lot of faith in some of these players I know have that talent, but he is changing positions, and I don't care what he did in college, right? That was 4 or 5 years ago, right? He is a different player, different specimen than he was then. So I have zero faith in him. He's got to earn his keep. He's got to prove his way, and he's got to freaking climb that mountain and earn those reps. What I do know is that Jon Runyan has a lot of experience at right guard. He is a better left guard. If the Giants want to be a competitive football team in 2025, they cannot be changing positions of players after they just build chemistry on that side. Jon Runyan is the starting left guard, in my opinion. That's not even a question. And the reason I say that is because he played 6 weeks with Andrew Thomas. He played the whole season with John Michael Schmitz. Why would you change his position now instead of giving him a little bit of consistency? And also, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why they're having him playing left guard. I think the real position battle should be a right guard. Is there a reason that you think there's some technical reason they have him playing left guard, or do you think there's just like kind of a Jon Runyan's out, let's have him play left guard and see if he gets some reps there and see if he looks comfortable?
Well, they're definitely not moving Jon Runyan. He is the starter. They're not going to put him over to the right side. Like I said, he's injured right now. That's why he wasn't out there at left guard. But Evan Neal has experience playing left guard. That's where he started his collegiate career. And I think that's the only reason that he's at left guard right now. I don't think it has anything to do with him fighting for a starting spot because, as I said, they view him as a backup. They're not putting him in a position to be the starter. So he's going to be playing left guard. That's where he's most comfortable. It's a position that he has experience at, and I think that makes sense for Evan Neal again because he's not going to be looked at as a starter, and he is going to have to compete. If you moved him at right guard, then that was a clear signal that you wanted him to try and compete for a starting job. And again, I don't think the Giants want that. They just want him to get better, play as a backup, and then eventually, if his number is called during the season, go out there if you're able to. And also, it's only the second day of OTAs. By the time we get to the fifth day of OTAs, maybe he's taking snaps back at right tackle. Maybe he's at right guard. We don't know. It's a little bit too soon to actually determine exactly where all these guys are going to play this season. Again, we've still got training camp in July when they put the pads on. And that's a big clarification point that we probably should have mentioned at the beginning of the episode. No pads are on. This is no contact. This guy is doing left guard work against a tackle sled. He's not hitting anybody. He's not actually playing left guard right now. This is just where they're lining up during the 11 on 11s, but they're not touching anybody. They're not hitting anybody. So it's really just placeholder filament for now for the New York Giants. And we'll see ultimately once we get to training camp where he fits best and where he performs best and where he ends up on the depth chart then. But right now, starting at left guard, and like I said, I think it makes sense considering that's where he started his collegiate career and he did perform well there. Playing right guard is a new position for Evan Neal. That never made sense to me for him to move to right guard. I always thought left guard would be the likely landing spot for him, as I said. So now let's go ahead and talk about Jaylin Hyatt because he caught a touchdown pass today, which I think is exciting. And related to that conversation is Jackson Dart threw the touchdown pass with the ones. This was in the first team portion of the scrimmage. Jackson Dart did get a handful of reps with the starters. Hyatt was out there. He did throw a touchdown with the starters to Hyatt. He did throw an interception with the starters, and he did rush for a touchdown with the starters. Jackson Dart did. So a pretty eventful first day of real practice for the rookie quarterback. I think that's exciting and all good to hear. Jaylin Hyatt making a touchdown reception is also exciting. And I'm going to tie this in, Alex, to something that Jaylin Hyatt was reported about earlier today, actually, from Connor Hughes of SNY. Connor Hughes of SNY released a mailbag recently, and in there, he mentioned that Jaylin Hyatt was, quote, mentally checked out last season after clashing with the coaching staff and upper management, end quote. So essentially saying he got put in the doghouse, didn't like his role, argued with the coaching staff in the front office, and that's why he got only 8 receptions last season. But now we've had a lot of discussions all offseason long about Hyatt. Can he play better with Russell Wilson throwing the deep ball? All these questions, can we get them answered? I do think it's an encouraging first step that he did catch a touchdown pass today with the starters, actually working in with the ones I think is important. But I also do want to get your take on it, Alex. The fact that he mentally checked out last season, the fact that he got into a clash with the coaching staff and with the front office. Do you have concern about Jaylin Hyatt, not just because he was ineffective last season, but now could you consider these potentially some sort of character concerns? Are you worried that if it's not going his way early this season, he'll mentally check out again? Because I'll be honest, I am a little bit concerned right now. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Jaylin Hyatt with the news that we got from Connor Hughes, and then also the fact that he did catch a touchdown pass from Jackson Dart
Yeah,
today.
man. It's a really interesting question. Jaylin Hyatt, there's two sides to this story, right? The first side of the story is that the Giants drafted this kid in the third round and then buried him, right? And then the second part of the story is why they buried him. Well, they had no offensive line and they had no quarterback that could throw the deep ball. And that was the entire reason they drafted this kid, was for his straight line, go route, 9 route capability. And then they were hoping to develop other parts of his game, similar to what they did with Darius Slayton. It never materialized, right? They could not run a downfield offense, and nobody bought the bait, as you could say. No one, when Jaylin Hyatt was on the football field, the opposing defenses knew he is either running deep or he is a non-factor, and they don't have enough time in the pocket. And they don't have the quarterback to make the throws. So let's just stick him out there, and they don't even have to worry. It's basically it was no reason to have him on the football field. His routes aren't good enough. His hands weren't good enough. He wasn't competitive enough on contesting catches. He did not earn the right to be out there more than he was, because his game is still very much undeveloped. So there's two parts to this story. The part that the Giants failed miserably to maximize the strength they drafted him for in the first place. And the other side of the story is that Jaylin Hyatt is just not that good, right? And so that's kind of where I kind of cross the line and say, do I feel like he is a character concern? I don't think so. I think he's just frustrated because his role has been completely diminished, and they failed him. And they can, just like they did with Daniel Jones way back when, just like they did with all the offensive line, first round, the high draft picks they spent, John Michael Schmitz, this guy, like, some of them are just not that good, obviously, but they also dramatically disrupted development. Deonte Banks is a guy you could point to, Anthony, one of the guys that you look at and say, that dude has been completely mismanaged, right? The Giants have mismanaged talent across the board at times, and I think Jaylin Hyatt was put in a position that he could not succeed, right? Their offense did not have the firepower, did not have the blocking, did not have the quarterback to maximize his skill set. Now they do. Now Russell Wilson is the guy that can maximize his skill set. The offensive line on paper, when healthy, is much better than it has been in years. We have to see it to believe it. So I think that any receiver wants to be on the football field. Any receiver wants to be getting targets and help make an impact. And the fact that he was getting annoyed and frustrated about it tells me at the very least he gives a shit. Excuse my language. He actually cares. Like, he wants to make an impact. The problem was the Giants just didn't have the offense that actually could help him make that impact. So it's a layered cake, as you could say. It's a layered situation. And I do think that they're positioned a little bit better this year to maximize him and give him some opportunities to make plays. So this story is not finished yet, is what I'll leave it at. This story is, I think there's a chapter here that could turn things around for him, and it could be a positive one. But there's a couple things that have to happen for that to actually come to fruition.
Yeah, I'll say I am concerned by it. I know I get what you're saying. He was frustrated last season. He had every right to be. He was playing with the worst quarterback room in the NFL. That quarterback room was unable to maximize his one biggest strength. But you also mentioned he didn't necessarily play well last season. I mean, like, he didn't get open against press coverage. His 9 routes were far too close to the sideline. He dropped a couple passes. Like, Hyatt hasn't looked good in recent performances. So I think that's obviously a cause for concern. But just to me, when the going gets tough, I don't like to hear that a player mentally checks out. I get confronting the situation with the coaching staff and, hoping to get a different role and obviously speaking to the front office. Those things make sense. But mentally checking out on the season, unfortunately, I feel like way too many Giants players mentally checked out last season. And I am disappointed when I hear that any of them have, because I know a lot of them did. But for it to come out that Jaylin Hyatt very clearly mentally checked out of the season is pretty concerning for me. So really need a big season out of him. And I'm not talking big like 1,000 yards. I'm talking like, can you give me 30 receptions this year, please? Like, we only had 8 last season. So I just want to see him at least return to form from where he was as a rookie and hopefully exceed that this season. And again, because Russell Wilson is here throwing the ball, I think he's got a good shot at it. But reminder, he is kind of buried on this depth chart. He does have Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson still ahead of him. So he's fighting for reps with Darius Slayton, and Slayton, the proven veteran that the Giants just handed $12 million per season to, likely going to earn those reps. So it's an uphill battle for Jaylin Hyatt. It's a tricky situation, but I do think, considering he did have some quit in him last year, this could be a scenario that plays out where the Giants give him the summer to prove himself. But if he's still not proving himself, I could see them viewing him as a little bit of a disruptance to the locker room and potentially making some sort of drastic decision. And I think I'm getting a little too far ahead of myself, but I do think those are thoughts that are trickling in as I react to this news of Jaylin Hyatt mentally checking out last season. And one last point that I'll make on it, Hyatt, I feel like every summer looks really good. As a rookie, we thought that we were getting some dynamic playmaker who was going to go for 1,000 yards as a rookie, right? Because he was so good during OTAs and so good during training camp. But there's a big difference between practice and real play because it's a lot more physical when you're on that regular season NFL football field. And that's the biggest problem for Jaylin Hyatt is physicality. So he caught a touchdown pass today. I'm excited for him, and I'm excited that Jackson Dart threw that pass. However, I got to see it to believe it with Hyatt at any point this offseason. Any highlight that he makes, I'm taking it with a grain of salt. He had that sick one-handed catch last year. Loved the play, but it was an OTAs. It didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. He couldn't even be physically touched on the play where he made that catch. So physicality is everything for Hyatt. If he's not a more physical player this year, if he didn't add some weight to his frame, if he didn't hit the weight room heavy, I don't think we're going to see the increase in production that we want to see from him. But make no mistake, I really want to see an increase in production from him. I like Hyatt, and I hope that he does perform well this season. Just a lot of question marks that I have for him. But Alex, I mentioned Jackson Dart threw the touchdown pass. He got a handful of reps with the ones. So did Jameis Winston. I think that's the right way for the Giants to do it. I think it's really important for Jackson Dart to gain chemistry with everybody and even Jameis Winston because things are in such a flux and the Giants have had so many quarterback injuries. I remember, Alex, last year during the season, we talked about how Tommy DeVito hadn't thrown passes to Malik Neighbors at any point during the summer training. And I was kind of like, that's stupid. That's kind of ridiculous. I understand he's the third stringer, but maybe at some point he should have thrown the ball to the starters just in case of emergency situations. Perhaps this is a signal that the Giants are learning from that mistake because they do have a third stringer now in Jackson Dart. He's technically third string, throwing the ball to the starters. Now, obviously, we don't know how long he's going to be third string. He could be first string by the end of the summer, potentially. Who knows? Very unlikely, but I do think it's important. So I'm curious to hear your take on that. The fact that Dart did step out there, did get some first team reps, and really how the Giants are kind of dividing these reps between the quarterbacks and the first team offense.
I mean, they're doing the right thing. They should be giving Jackson Dart reps at the first team. And why? Because he's going to be the quarterback of the first team within the next year, maybe sooner than that. So Russell Wilson, he'll get the start. They brought him in to be the starter for now. Jameis Winston, he's here for 2 years on that contract, barring a potential trade, which, we'll see what happens as the season progresses. But Dart's the guy, right? Like Dart could fight his way into the QB2 role at some point. It is imperative that they all, are getting those reps, but Dart is in the mix here because, I mean, let's be honest, Anthony, we need him to have chemistry with his playmakers in his offensive line by the time he starts, right? And if he's taking reps with his third stringers, he's not going to have that chemistry with them. So from day one, it is very clear to me. And also it's important for Dable and Shane because they need him not only to pan out, but they need him to flash upside. And right now they want him to be flashing upside in practice because that's what they can sell to John Mara. Like he's looking really good in practice. We really like his progression. He has chemistry with the first team. Like that, they're building this narrative to support them keeping their jobs, even if they have a somewhat down season. So I do think that there's a lot of moving parts in this one, but Dart getting reps to the first team is so important, not just for saving jobs, but for his growth. You can only get so good playing with third stringers and second stringers. Like, he has to be getting chemistry with Malik Neighbors when he does end up practicing. Obviously, he's not right now. And most importantly, the offensive line. He has to know the cadences. He has to have command of the huddle. He has to know his protection. Not that they're doing much of that right now, but I think that they will, as we get a little bit more down the line in summer. But getting reps with Jaylin Hyatt, getting reps with Darius Slayton, and when Theo Johnson's fully back, I know he had Liz Frank injury as well. So there's a lot of things here that are super important for him to have the confidence with the first team, understand who his guys are, build chemistry, and we know he likes to throw the ball downfield. I mean, you want to know who loves to catch the ball downfield? Jaylin Hyatt. So not a bad place to start if you're Jackson Dart trying to like redefine Jaylin Hyatt's career at this point, but also trying to build your own. So I do think that there's a lot to like, and I think that his aura, his command, his confidence is going to bleed into this team. And I also think that him being able to watch Russell Wilson, watch Jameis Winston, how they carry themselves, how they go about their communication, how they go about their confidence, and all the different small details. That is, a great quarterback is a culmination of thousands of small details. It's not one big thing. It's hard work over years that becomes little things and into big things. And I do think that Dart is starting the process of getting just an understanding of what an NFL quarterback looks like, the cadences, the verbiage, the command, the intangible traits, the tangible traits too. All of that's going to take time. And the Giants have no reason to rush him, but when he is ready, they want to know that he can step in and have confidence because he's already worked with that first team. So yes, to answer your question, long way around, I definitely think it's important.
We're in complete agreement. I think it's super important, especially because, hey, listen, number one thing is Jackson Dart needs to be ready to go at any point this season. If the Giants are clearly going to be eliminated early in the season and Brian Dable needs to save his job, we do have to expect him to make a drastic decision to throw the rookie out there in an effort to save his job. So Jackson Dart got to be ready at all times. Happy that he is ready, or starting to look like he's on the path to get ready, playing well against the first teams for the handful of reps that he did so far. But again, it's only OTA, so still a long road ahead as we continue to get through the summer of practices. Now, one other thing you mentioned there, Alex, how Jaylin Hyatt loves to catch passes deep downfield. Well, you know who else loves to catch passes deep downfield? And my answer might surprise you. It's safety Dane Belton, who had an interception today. Dane Belton is a player, Alex, you weren't on yesterday's live stream. I did that one solo, but I talked about him for quite a little bit because he's a player that low-key has developed into a pretty quality rotational piece for the New York Giants. I think he has 9 total turnovers forced through the first 3 seasons of his career. He played a career-high 42% of snaps last season, quietly finished the year with about 55 tackles and the turnover force. So a pretty good player. Lots of fumble recoveries, a couple interceptions, a guy who doesn't start and probably won't at any point this year, barring any injuries, but ultimately is a very good quality contributing rotational piece. And so I'm not surprised this kid, who's basically been a turnover machine anytime he is on the field, snagged an interception today in the first day of OTA practices. So really like what Dane Belton brings to the table. I think a lot of people sleep on him. Again, not saying he's got the starting potential or Pro Bowl or All-Pro potential, anything like that. I just think he's a really quality rotational piece. So I was happy to hear him kind of get that interception and continue to be that turnover forcing machine that he is. So, since you didn't get the chance, Alex, yesterday to discuss Dane Belton as I was doing my preview of OTAs and talking about the secondary as the main focus, how are you feeling about Dane Belton? Do you see it similarly as I do? Like, he's a really good rotational piece for the Giants, and it's good to hear that he still has that knack for the football as we enter the 2025 OTAs.
Yeah, I mean, listen, his role has been, I could say, undefined for a while. He's been trying to find his footing, trying to work his way into the equation here. Do I see him as a starter? No, but every good team has great depth, right? That's just how you survive. That's how you win championships. If you have great depth, there's always injuries. When Rashee Rice went down last year, you want to know who was ready for the Chiefs? Not that they won the championship, but you know what I mean. Xavier Worthy was ready to step up and be the guy. You have to have competent depth, and I think that's critical. So Dane Belton, can he be your backup free safety? Can he be your backup strong safety? Absolutely. He's a hard hitter. He does have that ball hawk kind of mentality. Like, he's in the right place at the right time. And having a guy that can create some turnovers every now and then, even if he's inconsistent as a backup piece, that's not a bad thing to have. A guy that just has a knack for getting the football in his hands for the most part. So getting an interception today, making some progress. He's always been one of those guys that I like he has it in him to be a decent player. He just never got there. Really was never given the opportunity because, Jason Pinnock, and not that he's a great football player, but he was actually pretty bad last year. Belton did get some action. I think he had 2 interceptions. So I do think, there's some untapped talent there. And this is where it all comes together, Anthony. Like, they need to get value from some of those draft picks that have just been ghosts for a long time now. Another guy that's on the brink of being cut, not that Dane Belton is, but another guy that really needs to show any sort of worth, or he's done, Josh Azidu. Like, he's on his last leg. Like, he's got to show something this training camp, otherwise he's cooked. So there's a couple guys like that. I'm curious to see how Daniel Bellinger fares. I think he'll remain on the roster for the last year of his rookie deal, but he obviously has not carved out that role. I know a lot of people mentioned the eye injury that he sustained that maybe has set him back. So there's certainly a lot of pieces on this roster that are fighting for opportunities, and Belton, I think, he could play a decent role. Now, I do think Tyler Nubin, and I think you agree that he will probably play strong safety. You have Jaylin Hyatt, but Belton could be a good rotational piece and a really good depth piece that can play both safety positions. So that's really valuable to have. Even if maybe he didn't become a starter, depth is critical, and the Giants finally feel like they have a little bit of that.
Yeah, I am feeling that way. I do think the secondary has some quality depth. Kind of similar thought about Cordell Flott. I don't think that he is a starter, but I think he is a pretty quality depth piece at this point in his NFL career. So in the same way I feel about Dane Belton. And yes, I think that Tyler Nubin's in store for a step forward in the second season of his career. As I mentioned in yesterday's live stream, again, Alex, you weren't there, but I kind of envisioned an amoeba defense. I used that term. The amoeba defense is the term that the Miami Heat used to use years ago when Eric Spoelstra was coaching Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, and Chris Bosh. And essentially what it means is that your defense is constantly disguised and it's pretty positionless. And so I said I think that the Giants can kind of replicate an amoeba defense because they have Tyler Nubin and Javon Holland, both of whom have played at least 40% of snaps at some season in their career in the box, but also 60% of snaps at some point in their career at free safety. They both have the ability to just play either one of those positions. So at any point, an opposing offense won't know which safety position is being occupied by which safety. They can disguise their coverages really well pre-snap and then switch into whatever they want post-snap because both Nubin and Holland have the ability to play strong safety and free safety at any given moment. Linebacker too for both of them, honestly. So, and slot cornerback, they move all over the place, which is great. I think it's going to make it a very versatile and hopefully effective defensive backfield. But yeah, that's essentially the wrap up on the first day of OTAs practice. I think the Giants are off tomorrow, but they're back on the practice field on Friday. So of course, you guys know we will hit you with an update then and discuss everything that's covered. New York Giants at OTAs. Main points, though, really, no Malik Neighbors. He's still dealing with a toe injury that he's been dealing with since college, but nothing to be concerned about there. He's going to be fine. Giants said they're just playing it smart and bubble wrapping him because they can. Same thing with Andrew Thomas. Apparently he's healthy. He could go out there if he needed to, but they're bubble wrapping him because they can. And John Runyon Jr. is still working back from his injury, so a little bit different than the other two. But those are essentially the main points and details on the injury front. What we saw today was, again, a very light practice, no contact. There won't be any during OTAs, but at least we got our first hints of Jackson Dart throwing touchdown passes with the starters. That's exciting. And all the other big updates that we did mention. So another fun recap. Happy to be rejoined by my good friend Alex Wilson. We have not split up for everybody who speculated that we did. We haven't, and we will not. And we are back and ready to discuss OTAs after every single practice for the next 2 weeks. It's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you listen to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review and go ahead and follow us on all our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you all on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.